Hello and welcome, as always. I'm Judge Zed, aka Zacharias the Pious of House Lane, first of his name, former Lord of Give-a-Shit-a-Sheer, Harbinger of Sass, and Holy Prince of the Sea of Ash, and Lord of the Game, and today that game is going to be none other than Alien, the role-playing game by Free League Publishing, in accordance with their overlords at 20th Century Fox and the Walt Disney Company. Alien is finally a role-playing game, not just Aliens, the role-playing game, which came out in the early 90s, Alien, the entire franchise, the good, the bad, warts and all, combined into a single role-playing game experience, including the prequels. Yes, even those prequels are shown in full force. Even Alien Isolation, the video game, which I recently did a Let's Play of on my Twitch channel, which is a game that I love. I think it's a masterpiece. Now, moving on, though, what I want to do is show you all an invitation that I've kind of done, using a template invitation that was posted to Reddit that thanks to Reddit's excellent search engine, I cannot find the original. So I really want to give credit to the person who made this invitation originally for their version of Chariots of the Gods. I then took their templates, I redid them, I rewrote them to be in accordance with Hope's Last Days, an adventure that I did a lot of punch-up work for. It is Hope's Last Day is a quick cinematic adventure that is like the starter adventure that comes with the game, but it lacks the first two acts. So I've kind of done some punch-up. I've created two additional acts to go along with the third act that is published in the book. And I'm planning on running this. I think it's the third time I have ever run this. I've done a little bit more punch-up work recently on what I've written so far. And I would like to invite you all to come play with me, or to at least check out the actual play, which should be coming out here in the next couple weeks. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. Alright, and after that trailer, we're greeted with our homepage for the invitation here, which is going to give us a lot of information. So let's just go ahead and jump right in and go to the overview here. Space is vast, dark, and not your friend. Gamma rays and neutrino bursts erupt from dying stars to cook you alive. Black holes tear you apart, and the void itself boils your blood and seizes your brain. Try to scream, and no one can hear you. Hold your breath, and you rupture your lungs. Space isn't as empty as you'd think. Its frontiers are ever expanding. Rival governments wage a cold war of aggression, while greedy corporations vie for valuable resources. Colonists reach for the stars and gamble with their lives. Each new world tamed is either feast or famine. And there are things lurking in the shadows of every asteroid. Things strange and different and deadly. Things alien. This is the official Alien tabletop role-playing game, a universe of body horror and corporate brinksmanship, where synthetic people play God while space truckers and marines serve host to newborn ghoulish creatures. It's a harsh and unforgiving universe, and you are nothing if not expendable. Stay alive if you can. You are hereby invited to Hope's Last Days, a cinematic scenario for the Alien role-playing game. And here on the link, you can click that, and it'll take you out of the presentation into the page itself, where we will be playing the game. Let's get back. What's the story, Mother? This is going to give us the overview of the story here. Hadley's Hope is a shake-and-bake colony located on the moon LV-426, established in 2157. The colony is a terraforming research and mining facility, and a new home to its pioneers. By 2179, there are 158 colonists there, and the first natives of LV-426 are born. The giant processors are changing the atmosphere, now breathable, but still choked by dense clouds and racked by electrical storms. The sky is always gloomy, more like night than day. Even when the sun is above the horizon, it's often hidden behind the giant form of Calampos, LV-426's parent planet. Some said building this colony was unwise. The moon hadn't even been mapped in 2157. The weather would make life a constant struggle, and the violent geology made it feel as if the world didn't want anyone there at all. Yet, someone at Weyland-Yutani allocated the budget, gave the green light, so Hadley's Hope was founded. Supervisor Al Simpson got stuck into the job, and the colonists soon learned to live with LV-426's corks. It wasn't long before they were making a success of this most unlikely of colonies. Hope's Last Days tells the story of the final days of Hadley's Hope, all through the eyes of 5 colonist workers. It offers a taste of cinematic gameplay and eases players into the action the way the film's intended. The pre-generated characters all have their own agendas, buddies, and rivals, but together they will learn they have one desperate collective mission: to escape LV-426 alive. That's our story so far. Let's check out the crew manifest and look at some of these playable characters before we do a deep dive into the mechanics of this role-playing game. Each player in this game, except one, myself, assumes the role of a player character, PC. You might be a space colonist, a space trucker, a marine, or something else entirely. You decide what your PC thinks and feels, what they say and do, but not what happens to them. The player characters are always the protagonists of the story. The game is about you, your decisions, your story. The final player is the Game Mother, or GM for short. She describes the alien universe to you. She portrays all the people and creatures you meet during the game. Characters controlled by the GM are called non-player characters, or NPCs for short. The game is a conversation between the player and the GM, back and forth until a critical situation arises where the outcome is uncertain. That's where the dice come in. It is the GM's job to put obstacles in your path and challenge your PCs, forcing them to show you what they're really made of. But it's not up to the GM to decide what happens in the game, and above all, not how your story is supposed to end. That is decided in the game, and that is why you are playing the game, to find out how your story ends. In Hope's Last Days scenario, you take control of a pre-generated character, one of several colonists living in Hadley's Hope. The characters you play as may be selected from the list, determined randomly with dice roll, or assigned by the Game Mother. Regardless of how your group chooses to proceed, you should familiarize yourself with the full cast of characters. Once characters are chosen, the GM will provide you with a character sheet as well as any secrets or personal agendas your characters may have. I think that's this is me talking now. I think that's one of the most interesting things about this game, is that you are encouraged to give your players hidden agendas, secret missions, secret things that their character wants to do or accomplish that may be antithetical to the desires of some of the other player characters, giving this game a very intense feeling of paranoia and mistrust between the party, especially for a one-shot. That is always excellent when you're able to pull that off. Let's take a look at some of these characters. We have Hannah Singleton is a pilot, although in this scenario she's not so much or I should say they're not so much a pilot, rather they are a driver. They are a tractor driver of Hadley's Hope Colony. They are age 32. They are self-sufficient. They've stood on their own 2 feet as long as they can remember. The only lesson their useless parents taught them was that life is hard. You have to be harder. You want to advance by any means possible, and if that includes ignoring a few principles along the way, then so what? They like McWhirr, but aren't a big fan of Hirsch. But let's look at some of these other characters here. Holroyd is a roughneck and an android. Holroyd the android. A Weyland-Yutani android, been placed on LV-426 for 2 years now. And they're a technician known for getting on with things without complaining. They try to get along with everybody and overall works fine. However, they think Sig spends too much time griping and not enough time working. And for some reason, McWhirr dislikes him. Now McWhirr, Janice McWhirr, is, in my mind, kind of the Ripley character of this scenario. She is the Colonial Administration Union organizer here on LV-426, and she takes her responsibilities very seriously. Naturally, she expects the workers to do the same, but it's hard enough with the Weyland-Yutani bastards breathing down her neck. If she didn't get help from the workers, what hope is there? At least some, like Singleton, are supportive, although she would sack Hirsch and Holroyd if she could. Not a fan of the android, not a fan of Hirsch. Let's deep dive a little bit into Hirsch. Hirsch is an ex-Marine, but that's a bit of a secret. He's been cleaning up Hadley's Hope for years, and has seen it all, done it all. He went AWOL from the Colonial Marines, and went into hiding here ages ago. He knew Hadley's Hope would be like a home for the rest of his life. The only downside is McWhirr. He's his boss, and never lets him forget it, although the young Singleton doesn't much like him either. So dealing with leaving the Colonial Marines, trying to hide from going AWOL to get out of a court-martial there. Lord knows what a court-martial's like in the Colonial Marines in the 2100s, but we'll get on here with Sonny Sig, a lab technician and scientist at Hadley's Hope, 29 years of age. That'll come into play during the course of the adventure. Loves his job as a lab technician and truly believes he has his whole life ahead of him. Hadley's Hope is just a way station before moving on to bigger and better things. He likes Hirsch, and he has an open mind, but McWhirr acts as if she owns the place, and him. So he's not too fond of McWhirr. These are our 5 pre-generated characters that will be living here on Hadley's Hope. Very interesting characters. I like the way that they will be interacting with the events going on around them. I've done my best to keep this as canonically accurate as possible, although I am aware that the Alien Expanded Universe is a universe in which canon is almost in a constant flux state. I've done my best to keep this canonically accurate with the comics and expanded novels within the Alien universe, as well as the films. I've watched and rewatched Aliens multiple times to get that feel of Hadley's Hope and those little inside jokes to really pop. I feel like I've done a good job, but we'll find out when we play. Let's jump in here to the operating procedures. So here are the 4 attributes and 12 skills that are at use in the game. You've got Strength, which is raw muscle, power, and brawn. We're familiar with Strength as a role-playing game enthusiast here. Strength dictates the skills, heavy machinery, stamina, and close combat. Agility, body control, and speed. Again, something we're familiar with. This dictates mobility, piloting, ranged combat. Wits, sensory perception, and intelligence, which dictates observation, comtech, and survival. Comtech, that's communications technology. Empathy is personal charisma and the ability to manipulate others. Now, charisma is a stat in many popular role-playing games. Empathy, not so much. But I feel like empathy, we've got charisma sometimes, personality other times, but I think that empathy really is a good catch-all for all things that it is supposed to be. It's not just your looks, it's not just your personality, it's your ability to connect with others, or to seemingly connect with others. And that is going to dictate the manipulation skill, which is manipulating other people and what they're thinking. Command, which is your ability to tell other people what to do and have them follow your instructions. And medical aid, which is a bit self-explanatory. Now, we could get into why I think maybe medical aid should be under wits, but at the same time I think empathy, it matters a lot. with this sort of thing. And in the Alien universe, I think that having a condensed number of skills and attributes is important, because this is going to be a very cinematic style of game. Getting into how this game is cinematic, we're going to go into the rolling of the dice. This is a dice pool game, however, it is not a total the number kind of dice pool game. We'll get into that right now. When the GM asks you to roll a skill check, first describe what your character does, then add your skill level to your score in the attribute connected to the skill, and grab that many base dice. You have stress dice below. Add these to the dice pool as well. So there are two kinds of dice in this game. There are base dice and stress dice. Let's go over base dice real quick. Let's say you have 5 in strength and like 3 in heavy machinery. That means you're going to roll 8 dice all day. You roll them all together. For your action to succeed, you must roll at least 1 star symbol, or if you're using, regular dice, it's the 6. As long as you get at least 1 6 in your pool of dice, that action succeeds. If not, your action fails. If you roll more than 1 star symbol, you can perform stunts listed under each skill description. This is a really interesting mechanic. So let's say you're doing that heavy machinery thing, and you roll 1 star symbol, plus symbol. You succeed. You did the thing that you were trying to do. However, let's say you roll 2 or 3 plus symbols. Then you get to start using stunts. Then you can say, like, alright, I'm trying to fix this atmospheric processor. I rolled 3 pluses. I want to get a +2 next time I have to do anything to deal with the atmospheric processor, even tangentially related. And I also want to have, like, I don't have to deal with it again. Like, I automatically succeed if I have to deal with something else relating to this issue. I don't have the list of stunts right in front of me, but they are very similar to things like that. They allow you to manipulate skill checks that you're going to have later on in the game, and they give you some freedom with the storyline as that is playing out. Now, the stress dice, the 1 on the stress dice is replaced with a face hugger. If you roll 1 or more face hugger symbols, you fail your check and you risk panicking. Now, this is the core mechanic of the game. If you're following along this far and you're familiar with the Free League, this is not too dissimilar from their other games like Tales from the Loop or Tales from the Loop 2 Loop Harder. I know that's not the name. I can't remember what the actual follow-up to Tales from the Loop was. But very similar, but this panic mechanic is new. And it rhymes. So let's go in a little bit more. Stress represents the mounting tension as your character is pushed to the limit. Your character's stress usually starts at 0. Stress increases whenever your character experiences particularly intense or frightening situations, and by pushing dice rolls. So here's the caveat. Let's say you're rolling 8 dice. None of them come up a 1 or a 6. Well, something I should also mention, that you can only fail a check if the stress dice comes up as a 1. Only the stress dice have the 1 symbol. So it is impossible to fail a check if you are under no stress at all, which is pretty interesting. It's a really interesting mechanic. It's a really cinematic mechanic for this game. But let's say you roll, you don't get any symbols. You can now push that roll. Pushing a roll adds stress. Stress gives you an additional stress die to roll, as well as having that 1, that face hugger symbol. Stress die also has the 6, the plus, the star symbol, which gives you a success. So pushing your roll, it actually increases your chance of success, but introduces a chance to fail if you were not stressed out before. When making skill rolls, add a number of stress dice to your dice pool equal to your current stress level. This means stress actually increases your chance to succeed at skill rolls. It makes you more sharp and alert. However, if you roll that face hugger symbol on 1 or more stress dice during a skill roll, you risk panic. And panic is basically you're going to roll a number of panic dice equal to your current panic score. and then you total what that dice is. That is the dice pool mechanic that we're more familiar with like West End Game Star Wars. So let's say you've got one stress die. Well, you roll that die, and as long as it's between 1 and 6, you hold it together. You know, you manage to keep yourself together, nothing crazy happens. Now, if you roll anything, if you have 2 stress dice, and you roll anything above a 6 on those 2 dice, which is pretty likely, then you will start panicking. You will freeze in place, you will drop what you're holding, you will act in a way that will increase the stress of your companions. But let's talk a little bit more about pushing the dice roll here. You can choose to push the roll, as I've mentioned previously. You grab all the dice that didn't show a plus and roll them again. You get a new chance to roll that plus. So you can push dice rolls that you've succeeded, although it's ill-advised. Usually you would only push a dice roll if you failed it, although you can push a roll even if you rolled a plus first to get more pluses to increase the effect of an attack, for example. Pushing a roll is not without risk, as it increases your stress level. You can only push a roll once. If you don't succeed on your second try, you just have to deal with the consequences. Some talents can allow you to push certain rolls a second time. So certain characters have talents, like the scientist character has a talent that allows him to push rolls. The robot character can push certain rolls. So you can push them a second time, but for the most part, you'll only ever be able to push them once. Now, panic. Pushing yourself builds tension to a point where you risk going into a wild panic or violent outburst. And during a scenario, and at the GM's discretion, stressful or dangerous events can increase your stress level as well as trigger panic rolls. So, as the game mother, you get the opportunity to trigger a panic roll whenever you so choose if the situation is stressful enough. Pushing dice rolls is a little bit like playing blackjack. It increases your chances of success, but if you push too hard, you suffer the consequences. In the Alien RPG, these consequences are triggering panic and losing control of your character. Game over, man. Game over. We're all doomed. When you roll stress dice in a skill roll, one or more facehugger symbols come up. You cannot push the roll. Instead, you must immediately make a panic roll. A panic roll can cause your skill roll to fail, no matter how many pluses you roll. So that's a little harsh, but it's very, very accurate. I think it's very cinematic as well. Operating procedures modifications. Sometimes external factors help you to succeed. We're familiar with modifying dice rolls in tabletop role-playing games, of course. This gives you extra base dice to roll. So rather than giving a plus or a minus on like some kind of modifier, you're either giving or taking away dice from the actual check. Other times, something hampers your action. This gives you fewer base dice to roll than normal. This is called a modification. Modification of +1 means you roll 1 more base dice, +2 means you roll 2 extra base dice, and so on. Modification of -1 means you roll 1 less, -2 means you roll 2 fewer, and so on. Several modifications can apply to the same roll. Simply add them together. A modification of +2 and one of -1 adds up to a +1. That's some basic math. If you don't have enough base dice to remove after a modification, remove stress dice. If you end up with no dice at all, you have no chance to succeed at this action. It's time to rethink your strategy. So it can be mathematically impossible to succeed, and that will become very apparent to you trying to make this check, because you will have no dice to roll. Help from others. PCs or NPCs can help you succeed at a skill roll. This can be declared right away before you roll your dice. It must also make sense in the story. The individual helping you must have the capacity to support your action, and the game mother has final say in this. For every person helping you, you get a +1 modifier. No more than 3 people can help you with a single roll, meaning your maximum modification from assistance is a +3. Pretty straightforward there. Opposed rolls. Sometimes rolling a star symbol success isn't enough to succeed with your skill roll. In some cases, you have to beat your foe in an opposed roll. To win an opposed roll, you have to roll successfully and roll more star symbols than your adversary. Only you, the attacker, can push your roll. Sometimes you and your adversary roll for different skills, sometimes the same. Opposed rolls are common when you manipulate or use mobility to sneak. And when someone uses those skills against you, the GM can also use opposed rolls when she deems it appropriate, like rolling stamina versus stamina to determine the outcome of an arm wrestling match. So, again, this is something that's pretty common to role-playing games. We're all familiar with opposed roles, although this time it's more about how many successes you get on those, how many sixes come up in your dice pool, and who is initiating this, because only they may push their attack roll. It's very interesting, and I think that also applies to the aliens as well. Finally, gear. To survive the world of Alien, you need the right gear: an M314 motion tracker, a Mark 50 compression suit, or an M41A pulse rifle can truly mean the difference between life and death for your character. Likewise, a lack of air, food, water, and electrical power can be just as deadly as a violent threat. You don't need to track consumables like these at all times. In the confines of a functional spaceship, orbital station, or planet-side colony, you're likely to have consumables you need. The Game Mother lets you know when resources are scarce and when it's time to start tracking them. That will not really come into play in this adventure. That is the basic rundown of Hadley's Hope adventure here in the Alien role-playing game. There is other methods of playing, and I do want to just touch on a few other things. Let's go ahead and see if we can bring me back up here. Are some of the ways that you can game this system. Now, I mentioned that there's an android character. There's a whole system for playing androids. Androids are very special in the Alien universe in that they're almost entirely indistinguishable from human beings, sort of like Blade Runner, except these robots run on milk for some reason. Now, these robots, because they are programmed, never gain any stress. They don't have to deal with the stress mechanic. They can still be killed, absolutely, but they don't necessarily fail their skill checks in the same way that other characters would. And because of that, because of the cinematic nature of this game, let's say you're using your pulse rifle, and you're a human character, and you've taken a bunch of stress, and you get some ones on your pulse rifle attack. That means you fail your skill check. But what that also means is that why did you fail your skill check? You didn't just miss. No. You're out of ammo. You need to reload now. This is a game in which you only run out of ammo when it's cinematically appropriate for your character to do so. Kind of like an action movie. Kind of like Aliens. Now, because of that, androids never run out of ammo. And you may be asking yourself, well, how does that work? That doesn't make any sense. Think about it in your mind like this. The robot, it's not that the robot has an infinite ammo headband. It's that the robot is so calm, cool, and collected, and so programmed to work in the most efficient manner. Think Arnold Schwarzenegger's shotgun reload in the Terminator, where Terminator 2 specifically, where he does this kind of he flips the gun around to reload it, and it's just this one smooth motion. It's like it would be a free action, in any other role-playing game. But in this role-playing game, it's just described like it just kind of happens in between shots, it's not that important. The action economy is also very similar to any other role-playing game you've seen before, but this game plays out in a very fun, very cinematic way, and I really, really enjoy it. I hope that you'll enjoy watching it and playing it as much as I love running it. I will be running this in the next few days, hopefully, and we will see then. I'm going to run this once and see if I need to do any more touch-up, and then I will probably release it as a kind of free-to-play module with some notes on how to run it on the Alien RPG Reddit for other people to pick up and play. And with that, that's all I really have to say about Alien for now until we run it. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking in that period where I have not produced any content for a few months now. And welcome back to the channel. Thank you all so much for your support. As always, I've been Judge Zed, aka Zacharias the Pious of House Lane, first of his name, former Lord of Give a Shitashir, Harbinger of Sass, Unholy Prince of the Sea of Ash, and Lord of the Game, and today that game has been Alien, the role-playing game by Free League Publishing. Have a great week at your table, and we'll see you all real soon.